Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1037A, and today's date is August 1st, 2016, and the title of the episode is the new U.S. currency hiding in plain sight? Will the old fiat currency become unredeemable? Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. I just finished up an interview with Jim Willey. A lot of people have been asking for Jim Willey, and we talked about many different things, and one of the things we talked about was this new currency, and he laid out pretty much how this is going to come about. And I'm going to put this interview on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel tomorrow morning, and this is something that everyone should listen to because it really goes into depth on how this is going to come about, what the United States is going to look like, and how the entire thing is going to unfold. So tomorrow morning, if you are on the X22 Report email alert system, you'll get an email. If not, just go to X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel. You can see the video there, or you can come over to the x22report.com site or newssentinel.com. You can scroll down a little bit, look over the right-hand side, you'll see the video there. Again, this will be up tomorrow morning, August 2nd, which is Tuesday. And I do believe that everyone should carve out some time, listen to what he's saying. He explains how this currency that we're using right now, it will no longer exist. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Today we see the stock market. It was quite flat today. It finished down a little bit. Gold moved up a little bit. But as we can see, gold is holding its own right now, and it's approaching $1,400 an ounce. And what we're seeing right now is everything's starting to accelerate at this point in time. The economic system today is completely unsustainable. And we're seeing a lot of indicators letting us know that things are rapidly falling apart. We're going to head out to Greece right now. And out in Greece, we see something interesting happening here. We know Prime Minister Tsipras, he was elected into office because he told the people that he was going to fight for them. He wasn't going to give in to the central banks. There was going to be no more austerity. Well, of course, another politician, another lie. And right now, we see Tsipras. There's many different agendas that are in place right now for the spring of 2017. He's planning on a series of referendums for the Greek people to vote on, including a review of the Constitution and the powers of the president. Now, we're seeing a lot of European nations doing this, where they're looking at their Constitution. Yes, the U.S. would like to change their Constitution too, but we're going to have to watch this very carefully to see where this is actually going. Out in the UK, we see manufacturing. Well, it is contracting. Now, this is contracting at a fast pace. Haven't seen anything like this in the last 3 years. Of course, everyone's going to be blaming this on the Brexit. But all of this is happening around the world at the same time. And when we look at this, we see that because of this contraction, the Bank of England, they might cut interest rates in August. Now, we're seeing a lot of central banks cut interest rates. We're seeing a lot of countries or European unions in negative interest rates. The United States, we might even be heading to negative interest rates. But out in the UK, the output index fell to 47.8 in July from 53.6 in June. This is the lowest since October 2012. Here in the United States, manufacturing, well, this got a little bump up. It bounced up to 9-month highs. What does that really mean? Everyone says, oh, 9 months. It's incredible. But really, when you look at this and we look at manufacturing at one point was much, much higher than it is today. Today, we're hovering around 52, 53 or so. Back in the times when the economy was doing very well, I mean, we were approaching 65, around that area. And all we're seeing is manufacturing is continually in its downward trend. Yes, we're getting little dead cat bounces here and there, but the trend continues downward. And I wasn't really surprised that manufacturing picked up a little bit, because we saw that little pickup in Baltic Dry Index, where that is a shipment of raw material into factories. But this is not going to repair the entire economy like the corporate media likes to make you believe is happening, where they say, oh, look, there's a bounce in housing. Oh, there's a bounce in manufacturing. Everything must be improving. No, these are dead cat bounces. And as soon as it's over, what happens is everything starts to decline once again. It does not improve. It doesn't get any better. And what we're looking at in manufacturing, there's two different things happening here. We have the PMI, U.S. manufacturing, which had this bump up. We have the ISM in manufacturing that started to decline. But when we truly step back and we look at the overall picture, it is in a downward trend. And every time we have these little bounces, it ends up even worse later on. I mean, if we go back to June of 2015, when we had this bounce up in ISM manufacturing, it declined rapidly from June to December. When we had a bump up in PMI in September of 2015, it declined rapidly to this point today. And we're going to see the same thing happen once again. We're seeing construction spending. For the third month in a row, U.S. construction spending dropped month on month, tumbled 0.6% in June, missing a 0.5% bounce. Now, this is the weakest annual growth since July of 2011, and they're trying to convince us that the housing market is doing awesomely well, with construction spending continually declining for the third month in a row. Now, we saw this prior to 2008, where everything started to decline. And when we were in 2007, it declined, we had a little bounce up, and then things really started to fall apart. And what we're looking at right now looks very similar to that right before 2008. So when we look at this, we see U.S. June private construction spending falls by 0.6%. U.S. private non-residential construction falls most since December. April construction outlays fell 2.9%. U.S. state local government construction outlays lowest since November. But again, everything is awesome, right? No, it isn't. Things are getting worse as we move forward into this year. Now, something very interesting. The sixth biggest economy on earth is right here in the United States. It is U.S. government entitlements. Now, the nation's entitlements, they have exploded. We have about 110 million citizens now receiving some form of means of benefits. When you add Social Security into this, it's 160 million citizens getting checks from Washington. The total cost now is $3 trillion per year, and it's continually rising. And what's very interesting about this, it is the sixth biggest economy in the world. So we have a society that is rapidly aging to the tune of 10,000 baby boom retirees per day. This 50% dependency ratio is not even remotely sustainable. There are currently 126 million prime working age persons in the United States between 25 and 54. That's up from 121 million at the beginning of 2000. Yet, even as the current business cycle is rolling over, the 77 million persons employed full-time from the pool is still 1.2 million below its turn of the century level. Yeah, that's right. Only 61% of the prime working age population has full-time jobs. That compares to 65% as recently as the year 2000. So you might want to wonder, how is it possible that a real consumption expenditure rose by a whopping 3 trillion or 38% during the same 16-year period, that the number of full-time age workers were actually dropping? The Fed has never once mentioned the rapidly deteriorating quality of household income and spending during the last 15 years. Wages are continually dropping. People are losing those high-paying jobs, getting part-time jobs or no job at all. So this scenario that we are in is a disaster, but it's worse. Really, back in 2010, the Social Security, they unofficially went bankrupt. For the first time since the enactment of Social Security amendments of 1983, annual outlays for the program exceeded receipts. The deficit has grown every year since 2010 and is now up 8% annually and is projected to be 31% in 2026 and 44% by 2046. So let's put this into perspective here. The program pays more than 60 million beneficiaries, almost 1 in 5 Americans. Now, the OASDI, the Old Age Survivors Disability Insurance, represents 25% of all annual federal spending. And for more than half of these beneficiaries, these benefits represent their sole or primary source of income. Now, the good news is, since Social Security came into existence in 1935, the program collected $2.9 trillion more than it paid out. The bad news is that the $2.9 trillion has already been spent. So, right now, Social Security is completely broke. There's nothing in there. And remember, this is not the government's money. This is the people's money. This is the money they take from you, and they said they're going to hold it for you so you'll have it when you retire. So you'll have some type of retirement. But the government has been using this money and replacing it with treasury bonds, saying, we'll pay this later. And all they do is they go to the Fed, they borrow more money to keep the system operating. And people say, well, why can't they just do this forever? Because when you continually do this, the countries around the world, they scratch their heads and say, okay, the dollar is devaluing. There's more currency being printed. There's more debt. How can this possibly be? We're losing faith in this dollar. It's unsustainable. It's like your household where you're making $50,000 a year or $40,000 a year, and you keep on bringing in more credit cards, and you continually charge. At some point, it's going to break. Yes, people on the outside might look good, might look and say, oh, look, this person's got new TVs, he's getting a new wardrobe, getting this, getting that. But eventually, it all comes to an end. The European banking system, it is a complete disaster right now. They've just done a stress test, and out of the 51 lenders from across the block, well, it does not look good. The banks are not properly situated to withstand a major market event. And we know these stress tests, this is an illusion. This is what they use to convince you that everything is fine. They don't want you worried about what happened in 2008. And we know right now that these banks like Deutsche Bank, like the Italian banks, the Portuguese banks, they're a complete disaster. They're getting ready to implode. And what we're seeing right here is the system is breaking down. So what does that mean? That means the United States government central bankers are going to need to do something to cover up this entire collapse. And in the process, while they're covering it up, they need to do something with the current currency. Now we know they're pushing for war. This is not going to stop the collapse. This will cover it up. We know they want to reset the system. And something very interesting, and this came out of the State of the Nation 2012, where they looked at the new $100 bill. And when you look at the old $100 bill, there's something on the $100 bill which says the following. This note is legal tender for all debt, public and private. And since the creation of the private Western Central Bank back in 1913 moving forward, it took some time, but eventually what happened, especially in 1971, that little statement was under the Federal Reserve logo on the bill. And when you look on the $100 bill or any of the other bills, you can see this statement. But the new $100 bill, this is very interesting. And many people talk about a gold standard. Many people talk about why is this all painted in gold? The 100 is gold. The ink well is in gold. The quill is in gold. But if you look at the bill straight on, you see the security around it, the blue ribbon in the middle. The left-hand side has to do with the Federal Reserve note. The right-hand side has to do with the United States of America. And they took that statement and they took it away from the Federal Reserve note section and they moved it under the United States of America. So this bill that they created back in 2008, but it was released in 2013, this might be the certificate that you might have to use during the crisis. Maybe you'll just rip a portion of it off and give them the right-hand side. Then the question is, what happens to all the older bills, all the Federal Reserve notes across the world? Maybe at that point in time, you will not be able to redeem them. They'll say, hey, we don't accept those anymore. So when we look at this, we might want to exchange our old currency for this new currency. Just hold some of these just in case. And it's very interesting when you look at this, that this is how they created it. Now, is this going to be the currency going forward? No, I think this is an intermediate when things are falling apart. When you go into a bank or you go anywhere, you'll need to show this to say, this is the new one, you have the old one, we don't accept the old one. And this is going to make it very difficult for many, many people. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.